Okay, AP Psych class, here is our final video for Unit 11 on testing and individual differences. We're looking at concerning intelligence, the nature-nurture debate. Clearly, genetics and the environment is a heated debate. If intelligence is purely genetic, is it a person's birthright to be part of the successful elite of society? I mean, people like Francis Galton and others, would have been proponents of eugenics, right? Breeding individuals based on, their intellectual or physical superiority and providing us with, higher quality human species. If it's environmental, is it fair that disadvantaged upbringing limits the opportunities and abilities of a person, keeping them low on the chain? And so, this is a crucial question that society has been asking forever, right? Which is it? Right? So let's take a look then at the evidence. All right, there is a chart on page 545 in your textbook that says it all. It's a combination of both, right? Myers has been advocating this all the way, since Unit 1, Nature via Nurture. Twin and adoption studies show us this, right? So they're looking at the similarity of intelligence scores or the correlation. It's like a 0.85 for identical twins reared together, right? Identical twins reared apart, it's, slightly lower, like a 0.7. So the lower correlation than identical twins reared together kind of shows that there might be some environmental effect. If you look at fraternal twins reared together, it's a 0.6 lower. The lower correlation than the identical twins would show that there is some evidence that there is a genetic connection. Siblings reared together is at a slightly higher than 0.40. So the fact that siblings reared together and fraternal twins reared together are different simply shows environmental pressures, in that fraternal twins are probably treated more similarly than other siblings are. So environment is playing a role, because obviously fraternal twins and siblings are biologically no different than one another. Unrelated individuals living in the same home is lower than all of those at about a 0.3. And so again, the best way to look at this, the twin and adoption studies show us, is that this is nature via nurture. Okay. Heritability is a term that we discussed previously in Unit 2 and Unit 3. It's back. Remember that heritability is the extent to which variations can be attributed to genetics. And remember the important key item. It never pertains to an individual, only to why people that are tested differ from one another. Okay, that is very important to keep in mind. Here is your, fake quiz question. As environmental, or how about I make it grammatically correct? As environments become more and more similar, does the heritability of intelligence increase or decrease? So come ready to discuss that in class. I'm going to present that to the group. Okay, early environmental influences we know are crucial. Again, I've said it time and time again. This is the reason why you couldn't pay me all the monies in the world to be an early childhood educator. There is an awesome responsibility on the shoulders of the teachers of the we people, right? Their early environment is everything, right? We could talk about early environment, like prenatal environment. But again, if we talk about even just, toddlers and young school-age children, right? Malnutrition, sensory deprivations, think of Genie, social isolation, right? Those can slow normal brain development, which would override any sort of genetic differences that we might see under normal conditions, okay? So, we can't discredit the impact that environment has on a person's aptitude or intelligence, okay? But it probably doesn't necessarily work in the opposite way, that trying to enrich an environment to like speed up brain development or somehow enhance genetic issues, that's probably not necessarily going to work. Okay, but fostering, early environmental influences that are positive and nurturing definitely can breed and foster all of the things that were genetically based. Concerning schooling, schooling can boost cognitive abilities. It's usually indicative of success later in life, despite the debates about our country's current economic situation. Right, this is Head Start's one of the potential items on the chopping block, as in an effort to save the federal government money. But Head Start was created for this very reason, right? Although the benefits dissipate with time, and I always kind of chuckle when I hear the various politicians on C-SPAN arguing about Head Start's merits. The benefits are going to dissipate with time. Like, you're not going to see long-term benefits of Head Start members, when they're in like the 6th and 7th grade. But it's the fact that you are providing a nurturing environment during those very crucial early years of development. And so again, this debate of nature and nurture is kind of cool in that it's, here we are nearing the end of this class, and we're kind of, this is an amalgamation of a bunch of different units that we've discussed to arrive at, the answer for, the source of our intelligence. So nerdy me thinks that's wicked cool. Okay, group differences in intelligence scores. Look, there's not really much difference between the male and female, but it's what everybody likes to focus on. Like, oh, men are different than females. So are there some differences? Yes. In the grand scheme of things of overall aptitude or intellect, not much at all. But if because everyone loves to talk about it, right? Language and verbal abilities tend to be female strengths. Emotion detecting, female strength. Spatial and math abilities, male strengths. Obviously, that's oversimplification, though. And the problem is that when society gets a hold of these sorts of research statistics, they blow it out of proportion, which we know, right, from our discussions in class, can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so how much of these differences are socially constructed? You actually do see that females live in a culture that puts a high value on math and science, can exhibit high aptitude in math, even though it's a male characteristic, right? So we just have to be careful of blowing gender differences out of proportion. Okay, same thing with ethnic similarities and differences. Look, there's no denying the statistics are there, that a racial gap exists concerning intelligence scores. The question, though, is why? Like, it's a bad conclusion to just simply draw, like, well, therefore, it's because of race or because of ethnicity that we are seeing these gaps. Okay? So let's not make those poor assumptions. Let's look at the facts. All right, so let's start with genetics. Look, races underneath our skin have very little difference with one another, okay? Fun fact, I'm actually more similar to a short black woman than I am a tall white one. And so to say that the differences in intelligence scores from the various races have to do with them being of a different skin tone is absolutely asinine. Okay. And also think about the fact that race is not neatly defined in any one biological category, right? People with various ancestries can still categorize themselves in the same race. Like, think Asian incorporates like so many different ancestries that to say that that's the reason that the gap exists is just ridiculous. Okay. And so we need to look at the environmental or social or cultural factors that are leading to this gap. Look, do Asian students outperform Americans in math? Sure they do. But they also spend more time in school, and they live in a culture that values studying outside of school more, and, not bringing a stain to the family name, and making their families proud. Like it's sociocultural. It's not racial, genetic thing. Okay. And we also know that environment's important if you think back to what we discussed concerning the Flynn effect, right? The better fed, better cared for population of the United States is more intelligent than we were, like when we compare U.S. scores to our own U.S. scores from the 1930s. So that's something important to keep in mind. If on infant intelligence assessments, which we know they're difficult to do because they can't talk, right? But if they use habituation and novelty preference testing, infant intelligence tests don't have differences of the different races and ethnicities. So clearly it's not genetic, it's not racial. Those gaps exist because of sociocultural reasons. Okay. Different eras in history have led to different golden ages for various ethnicities, right? Cultures rise and fall over the centuries. Genes don't. And so those are just some things to keep in mind. And once we look at college populations, the aptitude gap drops between the different races. Like once we're all there and in college, congrats, we all got there on our same, merit and abilities. You don't really see a racial difference. Okay, and so hopefully that clears up some questions concerning differences in scores. All right, so to round out the unit, the question of bias. Are intelligence tests biased? There's some things that we should talk about. All right, there's two meanings of the word bias, okay? Should the test in and of itself be held accountable for environmental deficiencies that lead to the discrepancies in the test takers, right? That's like me being short due to, I don't know, my undernourished childhood, and then being all pissy at the yardstick that's measuring me. That doesn't make any sense, right? But in that essence, I guess they are biased. Like they're intended to discriminate against people in that it's a measure of our abilities. So yeah, it's going to, separate those that can from those that can't. All right. But scientifically, they're not biased, right? In terms of predictive validity, the test is true for anyone. So they're not biased in that sense. So, like, the bias concerning intelligence tests exists within the sociocultural construct. It doesn't exist because of the test in and of itself. Okay. Test takers' expectations. You can fall prey to self-fulfilling prophecies and stereotype threat, right? That in a lot of cultures and ethnicities, like an expression of one's intelligence might be viewed as like rude or uncouth, not cool. So for whatever reason, those can play a role concerning how people score on tests. Okay, so in conclusion, do intelligence tests discriminate? Yes and no. Yes, that's their purpose. It's to categorize people based on their abilities. But no, and that they work to remove subjective criteria for placement. I mean, it's good that we, Binet's original intent of having an IQ test is still a good one, right? To have an objective way to measure whether or not a person is an outlier, statistically speaking, and to be able to provide them the accommodations they need to lead a successful life. Okay, so that is the end of Unit 11, and any questions that you have regarding that material, bring with you to our discussion in class. Thanks for listening.